So welcome back to the Floriani Software Fundamentals video series on FTCU. My name is Mark Garetz and I'm a National Floriani educator. And in this section we're going to be covering a bunch of miscellaneous but still very useful tools that we haven't covered in any of the other sections. The first tool I want to talk about is called name drops. And it's right here, and you'll notice that at the moment it's not lit up, and that's because name drops only lights up when we have a text object on the screen. So let's get a text object on the screen. I'm going to click my text icon, going to go to normal text and click in here, and it's going to put in the default my text. And once I've done that, you can see that name drops lights up. So what name drops does is it actually takes this first piece of text that we've created, which in this case just says my text, as the base, and then we're going to start putting in a list of other text to substitute with this. So an example might be if we had a set of athletic jerseys and we wanted to put in teammates' names. We didn't want to have to keep recreating that jersey design over and over again. That's what name drops does. It would keep that design and would keep putting in that text. So let's take a look at the interface real quick. I'm going to go ahead and click it. And what it does is it starts a list with the very first thing, and then we can click this plus icon and start adding in our names that we want to put in. Or it can be any phrase, doesn't have to be a name, but it was designed to do names. And then what's going to happen is it's going to work through this list, and it's going to create a separate embroidery file for each of the names on the list. And then we have the option of choosing an output directory where they're going to go, a base file name, so this will be the first one, and then it will add a 1 and a 2 and a 3, depending on how many names are in the list. And we can tell it when we click Save to go ahead and open up all those files, open up the very first one, or just don't open them at all. And here we have a choice of the formats to save the files in. So I could click this little set of 3 dots here, and I can choose any or all of these formats. So if I want to save a WAF version and a PES version, I can select more than one. So that's how the interface works. Let's take a look at it in the real world here. So let's close this. I'm going to just go ahead and close it, and let's put in a name here. So let's just start with Mark, and we'll click Apply, and then we will go ahead and click Name Drops. And so here's Mark here, and here's my font. If I click the plus, it's going to give me a second place to type, and I could put in, say, Walter. All right. And I can also, if I want to, change the font. I can change the height, and I can change the alignment. If I want to see what that's going to look like, I can click Preview, and it looks like Walter. Now, this doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but when you see a full design here, it will make a little bit more sense. And I can keep adding more names, like I could put in DJ, for example, and click Preview, and I would see DJ in there. And when I save this, it would save all those files. Now, I don't want to necessarily do that, so I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and close this. Now, in the real world, what would we have? We'd probably have a design. So let's bring in a design. Let's go to our Designs folder, and we'll bring in this angel, and we will put the name of our player. Let's say we're going to create a team called the Angels. So let me zoom out here a little bit, and I'll put the player name above the top. So we'll put the player name up here, and then below we'll put some text that says the Angels, and we'll kind of curve it around. So let me get another text icon, and we'll put in some more text down here. Click again, there we go. And here I'm going to put in Angels. We'll just leave this one all uppercase, and we'll click Apply, and we'll kind of center this up here, and we'll put a bend in it like this and like this. And I've gone over this, how to do this kind of thing, in our text sections. So we'll do this, and now we have a design. So now what we'd want to do is we'd want to leave this, say, Angels, and we want to keep substituting out this part. So if I select this, you'll notice that name drops is not lit up anymore, but it should be because I've got text objects on the screen, right? Well, it's not true because name drops can only work if there's only a single text object on the screen. And so what do we do in a situation like this where we've got multiple text objects on the screen? Well, we have to take all the ones that are not the ones we want to change, and we want to convert them from text into various kinds of stitch files. So for example, this is a satin stitch right now. If I select this in normal select mode, so I'm going to come down here and select this one, I can right click on it and I can click the item right here that says break up text. So if I click that, since this started out as satin stitches, if we look over here in our sequence view, you'll see that angels is now a bunch of just satin paths. So I can no longer have any text control over this. So before I do a breakup text, it's important that you get your text exactly the way you want because it's a one-way street. You can't go backwards. But now that I've done that, you'll see that name drops is lit up. I don't even have to have this text selected because it's going to select the only text object that it sees. So now, for example, I can come here and I can put in Mark as my first one, and if I click preview, it will show me that above there, and I can add another one. So let's put in DJ and click preview, and I'll see that one. And now you get the idea. So when I click save, it will save all these individual files, and all I need to do is take them to my machine and stitch them out. So that is name drops. The next tool I want to talk about is a fun tool called the distortion tool, and it's right here, right next to name drops. And it applies distortions to various stitch objects or collection of stitch objects. So I've created a sort of linear design here to make it easy to see what this tool does, and I'm going to select it, and when I do that, you'll see the distortion tool lights up. And when I click it, you can see the very first preview. This is a zigzag distortion, and I have two controls for a zigzag. I have my frequency, which is how many times it does the up and down, and the amplitude, which is how far it goes up and down. So let me just change the frequency down a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. You can see now there's fewer bumps in it. If I go up a little higher, you'll see there's more bumps in it. And if I change the amplitude up, you'll see that they get bigger, or if I change it down, they'll get smaller. The wave is very similar, except just before I go off it, you'll notice that these points are sharp, whereas the wave points are more rounded. So other than that, it's pretty much the same tool. The twirl tool takes this design and twirls it, and now all I have of control over is the angle of the twirl. So if I slide this around, that's no angle, but the opposite way, and then it's twirled a lot here. I can also pinch it, and that puts a pinch in the center, and the radius controls the size of the pinch, so I can make it bigger or I can make it smaller, and I can also change the scale of it, which is how much inside this it pinches. Okay, so I can make it just a slight pinch or a big pinch, and you see how the stitches got closer together and further apart as they get towards the center. So that's what that one does, and the last one is spherize, and that tries to take our object and kind of make it into a sphere. Now, these last three, twirl, pinch, and spherize, are not all that exciting on the design that I have selected here, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. I'm going to go to another window where I have a circle design that I have filled with a motif. If I select that, and now we go to our distortion tool, you can see that I get some interesting things going on. So zigzag and wave, they do some interesting things with it, but when we get to twirl, pinch, and spherize, you'll see how fun this gets. So when I get to twirl, you can see that it twirls it. If I change the angle, you can see that I'm getting different kinds of intersections and shapes going on there. Pinch looks really good with circles, so you can see that there. And I can change the radius to make it smaller, and if I change the scale, you'll see it looks more bulbed out like that. And spherize is my favorite. When I spherize a sphere, it gives it this real nice 3D look here. So you get some really interesting and fun effects with the distortion tool. The next tool I want to talk to you about is our auto base tool, and it's located right here. And when you click it, it's going to put in a basting stitch all the way around the design. Now, if you want to control what this basting stitch does and what it looks like, that's done through our program preferences icon, which is done right here. So if I click it and go to my auto baste tab, you'll see that I have the option of having crosshairs or not, and right now crosshairs is turned on, and that's making these little inset stitches here. So if I uncheck that, they'll go away. And I can also enter the stitch length for my basting stitch, and I can go from 1 to 100 millimeters. I probably don't recommend you go anywhere out nearly that far. 6 seems to be a good default. That's what it's set to. And then we lastly have a millimeters amount of spacing around the edge of the design. So right now it's set to 1 millimeter. I'm going to move it out to say 5 millimeters and click OK. And it's not going to modify the one that's already in there. So let me go ahead and delete that, and I'll re-add the basting stitch in. So I will come back here to my basting stitch, and now you can see that it's further away from the design, and I did not add in those crosshair pieces. So that is auto baste. So the next tool I want to talk about is one we call ghost mode. And we've talked in our sequence view about ways to hide various stitch objects by clicking on the eyeball here. So I could, for example, hide the body and the two wings of this cherub by clicking on their eyeballs. If I look at this now, it looks like I don't have any stitches there, which is what I wanted to happen. I wanted them to be hidden. But maybe I don't want them to go away completely. Maybe I want to be reminded that there are still stitches there. So that's what ghost mode is all about. So this little icon right here, the ghost icon, what it does is it takes hidden segments and stitches and makes them very, very light gray. So if I click it, you will see that those come back. They're still hidden, but I no longer see them in their true color, and they're just kind of ghosted out a little bit to remind me that there are stitches there, but I can't select them or do anything with them because they are hidden at the moment, and that's what ghost mode does. So if I turn ghost mode off, you'll see that they go away, and if I turn them back on, you'll see them come back. So that is ghost mode, and if I don't have anything hidden, I can turn ghost mode on or off and it doesn't affect anything. The next tool I want to cover is this one right here, which is our show or hide stitches toggle. Now normally this is on, where you always want to see the stitches, but sometimes when we're editing shapes and things, the stitches can be kind of distracting. So if I were to turn this off, I wouldn't see any of the stitches anymore. I would just basically see the outlines of my design. So let me turn it back on for a second, and I'm going to select this satin path over here, because what if I want to edit the outline or something with this satin path? And let me actually zoom into this. So I'll zoom to the selection here, and I will go into shape mode because I might want to edit what the satin path looks like. Now, when I do that, you see the stitches selected in here, and sometimes this can get a little bit distracting. So if I turn off the stitches, all I see is the outline, except I see a very, very ghosted mode of the stitches here, but this lets me isolate the points and the angle lines and the other things that are going on with this just a little bit easier than being distracted by the stitches. So that is what this show stitches control does. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out here, and I'm going to select everything that's black by selecting this right here, and we're going to actually change it to white. So let me actually find white here. I know that's 800, so I'm going to click find, and there's white, and I will change all of my black stitches into white. Now you can see them okay now, but if I turn off 3D or unselect them, it is very difficult to see those stitches. So how do we get around that problem? Well, we do that by changing our background from white to something else, and we do that with our background control here. So if I click it, I actually get two choices. I can pick a color or actually I can preview a fabric in the background if I want. So let's do color first. If I click that, I can select from any of these colors. So if I wanted to see the white, I just might pick a gray. So let me pick gray and say OK. And now I've got a different background and I can easily see those white stitches. I'm going to go back to white. I'm going to click color again and go back to white and click OK. But I could also use a fabric. So let me show you what that looks like. I can click from any of the built-in fabrics, or I can add things to my fabric library. But let me just pick this beige here and click OK. And we can see what that design would stitch out like if I go to 3D on a beige thatched piece of fabric. So that is the background control. And again, I'm going to go back to white and go OK. And I'm going to change my stitches back from white to black. All right, so I'm back where I started. So that is the background color control. Now we have talked about the fact that you can save presets for some of your favorite tools, notably all of the ones that have the little down arrow here. So these would be all of our stitch creation tools here, like I've saved a preset here under the run stitch called Bean. And if I want to remove that preset once I've saved it, I can right here. But you can also have presets down here with your one clicks. Now you can save and you can remove your presets. But what if you want to give your presets to somebody else? Or what if you see a preset on one of your friends' system or one of the educators' system that you might see from Floriani, and you want to be able to import those presets or export them so you can give your presets to somebody? Well, there's a tool to do that, and it's right here under Tools, and at the very bottom or very near the bottom, there's both Import Presets and Export Presets. So let's take a look at Export Presets first. When you click it, you're going to get a dialog that shows you all of the presets that you have saved, and you can select them all. You can actually select none with this. This won't actually delete them, but it will unselect them all. So you can just click on one to select the one you want to export, or if you want to, you can hold down Control and you can select, say, just the blanket and pattern 2 here to export both of those. Or if you want to select all of them again, you could just click this one. And once you've got the one selected that you want to export, simply click the Export button, and it is going to come up with whatever last directory you were working with and try and save it as a .pre file, which is our preset file. You'll just give it a name and click Save, and then you can take that file and give it to somebody else. If somebody gives you one of these files, then what you would do is you would come here to Tools and say Import Presets, and it would just give you a dialog to go to wherever you have saved it. Once you find that file, click Open, and it will bring in your new set of presets. Now, if they have the same name as some of your existing presets, it might overwrite them, but if they have different names, then they will coexist along with your presets, so it won't overwrite them. So that is how you import and export presets. The last tool I want to cover in this section is something we call the batch converter, and it's located right here, and I'm going to go ahead and click it to bring up its interface. Now, the batch converter does not care what design you have loaded at the moment, because it is going to operate on a source folder and a target folder, and it's going to take all the designs in that folder and convert them to different formats. So let's go over how this works. You would simply select a source folder here, and you could select a target folder here. If you want them to be saved in the same folder as the source folder, what you would do is check this box here, Save in Source Folder, and you'd no longer have a choice for a target folder. But let's assume you want to put them in a new folder. You can choose whether or not to include all of the stitch files in the subdirectories in that source folder or not, whether or not to overwrite any existing files that might be in that format, and also whether or not to rotate them to fit to the maximum hoop size for that format. Now, it won't enlarge them, but it'll just rotate them so they can fit into the hoop better. You can do all source formats that it finds or be selective, and you can output any of these formats. So you can check or uncheck any of those files. When you click start, it's going to loop through those files and folders and create new files. Now, most of you are never ever going to use this feature, but if you are creating files for distribution, like some professionals do, this is a great feature for you. Now, you might be tempted to use this tool if you say switch machine formats. So let's say you had a Genome machine and you had all your files in the Jeff format, and now you got a brand new brother machine and you want to save them in the PES format. You might be tempted to go in and click all your Genome files and move them over to the brother or baby lock format. You could do that if you want, but that's actually a waste of time and disk space. A better solution, in my opinion, would be to just open them up in our software and save them in your new format as you need them. There's no need to save them all in the new format until you need to stitch them out. So that is the batch converter, and that completes our miscellaneous tools section.